Hello, my name is Mary. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna be making a pumpkin topiary, which is great for fall decor. So let's get started. The colors that I chose for this fall are a vintage blue, which I mixed myself, also a Waverly chalk paint in the color pumpkin, and the light oatmeal. And that's what I chose for my 3 pumpkins. So we start by sanding out the pumpkin, and after you drop it and pick it up from across the room, then you come back and you continue to sand. I had to sand this pumpkin because I bought it at Goodwill and it had many holes on it. So I decided to use a little bit of a spackling putty, which I got at Home Depot, just to cover the holes. And I set it aside to let it dry. And this is the base that I found at Goodwill. It is made out of porcelain and it has some beautiful detail, which you will see pretty soon. For the base, I chose just a linen white made by Rust-Oleum. And in the beginning, I was using a very good brush that I have, but the bristles were really soft and it was a bit of a struggle for me to get the paint inside the creases of the detail on the vase. So I decided to switch to another brush that has more stiff bristles. So I started painting the inside and then I proceeded to paint the outside to cover the colors that the vase had, which just didn't work for my decor for this year. I was so lucky to find this piece at the Goodwill. I think I only paid like $3 for it. It was not on sale that day, but I thought the price was really good. The size of this vase is about 8 inches across and maybe like 10 inches tall. I thought it was a good fit for a base for my pumpkin topiary. Now I started to paint the top pumpkin, and the color that I chose for the top one was a light oatmeal color, which I mixed myself. But any light oatmeal color would work. And then for the middle pumpkin, I know that this color looks very turquoise. It looks lighter on camera, but it's actually a vintage teal finish when it's dry. And it's probably the lighting that's making it look lighter than it actually is. These are colors that I mixed myself as well. And I was struggling to paint the top and the bottom of the pumpkin, so I decided to grab another brush and I stuck it in the pumpkin and I turned it into a popsicle so I could paint all sides. For this piece, the paint must have been really good and I did use a really good brush, so I don't think that I needed to do a second coat for this one. And this pumpkin, which is gonna be at the bottom of the 3, this one had actually like a surface of like a decoupage kind of finish, but I couldn't find a bigger pumpkin. Honestly, this is what I could find at the Goodwill, and I thought it was a good size. I really wanted the pumpkin stack to be proportionately smaller as it went up. Now I noticed that it's important to have a really good brush because it does save you money on paint. Now the top pumpkin didn't really need a second coat, but I felt like it would help it look a little bit better maybe if I did. I really could have saved this step. So I'm just speeding up the process. And now I'm adding a second coat to the pumpkin in orange. This brush that I'm using right now has really hard bristles, and it's really good for getting inside any holes or any crevices, but it's not great for spreading the paint. However, it is what I had on hand because my other brush was still not dry from the previous paint. And I'm using the brush again. So I'm inspecting this middle pumpkin and I see that there's no second coat needed. So I decided to leave it as is. And I'm gonna be using Hello Hobby antique wax to give my vase and my pumpkins a little bit of a weathered look. And so it got a little bit heavy as I was applying it, but I was planning on using a wet wipe afterwards just to remove any excess. And this little brush that I have is wonderful for getting inside the crevices of the detail that the vase has. So I found it to be very easy to use for me to spread the wax all over the vase. You can see that cute little bee and those beautiful flowers. It's such a beautiful piece. So I'm just adding as much as I want and maybe a little bit extra of the antique wax, because later I can just remove any excess. You can see how much more beautiful this piece looks once you put the antiquing wax over the detail. I really think that this piece was underpriced at Goodwill. It is so beautiful. So now I'm just removing the excess. And I do want the paint to look a little bit older, so some of the antiquing wax is being spread onto other parts of the vase. So I'm looking at it, and now that I'm happy with the finish, I'm just gonna set it aside and proceed to antique or weather my pumpkins. And I'm using the same brush. I think this brush is wonderful for applying the detail that looking for on the pumpkin. This piece was gonna sit outside my front door, so I really wanted it to look like it was weathered and older looking. And now I'm applying the antiquing wax on my pumpkin, which will be the top piece. Now the color of the stem on top of the pumpkin was actually really nice, but I felt like it didn't match with the colors that I was using for this year, so I decided to go ahead and paint the stem as well in this antiquing wax color. And I think it just makes it match better with the rest of the pumpkins. And I'm just adding the antique wax to the bottom pumpkin, making it look nice and weathered. Okay, so now I want to make sure that when I stack my pumpkins, they are not looking wobbly or going over to one side. So I had to turn them around and find exactly how I wanted them to lay on top of another. And I found these beautiful picks at Dollar Tree. So I am choosing these leaves along with other colored leaves like red and brown, and I make sure that I use a mixture of these colors so not everything looks uniform and matchy with the same color. I could have used also Spanish moss, but I thought the leaves would give it a nice fall look and a little bit more of a pop of color. So I'm just playing around with the leaves. I removed the ones that were defective, and I'm making sure that I'm mixing up the colors to give it a nice variation. And once I have them how I like them, I will use hot glue to attach them. I didn't want to use too many leaves either. I wanted to keep the piece nice and simple. However, I have seen other crafters who use a lot of leaves in between the pumpkins, or even Spanish moss, and I think that would look really beautiful too. But for myself, this is the look that I wanted. And so I'm making sure that I position the pumpkin in the way that it's gonna sit best on top of the one below. And I'm gonna repeat the process with the upper pumpkin. And I make sure I use a lot of hot glue to make sure that my pumpkin is nice and secure, because it is gonna be sitting outside. If it gets windy, I don't want it to be rolling around all over my yard. And this is what it looks like so far. I'm really loving the look. So for this, I got Spanish moss, and I'm gonna glue it around the rim of my vase, which is also a base for my topiary. And I make sure that I use a lot of glue around to make sure that it doesn't fall off. And now I'm just applying a generous amount of hot glue, and I'm gonna stack my pumpkin. It is very tall. It turned out to be about 27 inches tall. So it was really hard for me to get the whole fit in the camera. And this is what it looks like all finished. What do you guys think? I hope you liked the topiary and the video. See you next time.